So I'm Karen Crowley. I'm with the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County. I'm the president-elect, and just delight in being able to work with all of you today. So what we're going to do today in this module, this one is about how and not what. And I saw some really interesting comments in chat about tone and delivery and how it is different when you speak than when you write. So that is exactly what we're going to talk about. So the goal of this session is to help you feel more comfortable presenting your testimony. And we're going to walk through the qualities that make a good presentation. We're going to move fairly quickly. So over this next 45, 50 minutes, we're going to review examples of powerful testimony. I have some videos to share with you. We're going to learn the do's and don'ts of effective testifying. You're actually going to practice a bit in pairs. And at the end, if you can stick with us, we're going to break you into groups and let you practice in small groups working with each other. And you're going to learn to identify and apply the best practices, what to look for, what to listen for, both for yourself and for others. So I want to start by getting a sense of how you feel about public speaking. My sense from listening to Pat's presentation is that we have a very active, comfortable group of people in this room. Now, your ability to write testimony might be very different from how you feel about public speaking. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Allison, I'm going to ask you to launch a poll. Okay. Tell me how you feel about public speaking. Would you, and be honest, would you actually rather jump out of a plane into an alligator pit? You've done it a few times, but you know, those butterflies, you want to get them under control. Maybe you have some experience, you kind of enjoy it, you're comfortable, but you want to fine tune. Or maybe you are all that in a bag of chips. You've had experience, considerable experience, you love it, and you're here today willing to share that experience with others. Tell me where you stand. We have a few very honest people who really want to stay out of the alligator pit, but you're here anyway. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. And I see a number of you, you've done it a few times. The butterflies are there. You just want some tips. We've got experienced folks. Give you a couple more seconds to fill this out. Just get the lay of the land here. Okay, Allison, I think that's good. You want to share the results? So really, we've got, again, a few of you, considerable experience, and I have a feeling I know who you are, that you love this and you are willing to share with others. Thanks. We're going to probably put you to work today. You're probably one of our coaches. And again, thanks to those folks who admitted that the alligator pit is there. Okay, I'm going to jump back in and we're going to hope that my Windows sticks with me here. So there we go. I appreciate that input. As you think about testifying, Allison, I'm getting my unstable note. As you think about testifying before any representative of any public meeting, hold on. There we go. You have something to say that matters. And Allison has said this before. Pat has said this before. I really want to double up on that. I want to remind you, you deserve to be at the table. Now, remember, in every public board, commission, or legislatures, they have made time on their agendas specifically to hear from you. You are a part of the process. You have a seat at the table. They should be curious about what you have to say. So we're here today to be your coaches. We're going to be giving you feedback. That can be tough. We're going to be listening to each other and you're going to be giving yourself feedback. The goal is to have you succeed and then take these tools and use them and develop your skills going forward. So I want to briefly review a few more of the logistics. You've heard this from Pat. You've heard this a bit from Allison. As you know, in the time of COVID, most public meetings now do allow remote testimony. We've all gotten more comfortable in this virtual environment. It is interesting in talking during our advocacy day, the League's workshop, we learned that committee chairs will decide how and when they will allow remote testimony. The tips I'm going to give you today, I'm going to talk about both being in person and testifying, and I'll give you tips for testifying online. So know that both are probably available to you. In terms of the state legislature, we're going to learn as we go, and we're going to see what those rules actually are. But generally, speakers testify in the same order as their names appear on a sign-up sheet. If you're there in person, you may actually be signing in to speak. Usually now in remote testimony or even in person, you can sign up ahead of time to speak. You can also sign up just simply saying, I'm in support of this, or I am against this particular piece of legislation, and I don't want to speak. But regardless, you want to be sure that you are aware of the processes and procedures that have been established. So make sure you do a little bit of your homework. Arrive, if you can, early to the meeting. Things can change in real time. So you want to be sure you actually understand the rules. And as Allison has said, your testimony will be recorded. So it's a good idea when you're testifying, pay attention to the previous speakers. You don't necessarily want to repeat points that they have made. If all of the points that you wanted to make in your facts have been made, it is okay to say you agree with the previous testimony, urge your representatives to take the action that you want to take. And of course, a reminder, your representatives may not give you any feedback. Testifying is often a one-way street. They're going to listen. They seldom ask questions, but as Pat has told you, should they ask a question, be honest, answer what you can, get the information to them afterwards if you can. And always, when we think about tone and interaction in this way, you do not want to ever argue with any member of a committee or commission or with people giving opposing testimony. You're there to state what you want to say. Now, we have a lot of good resources for you. I'm going to show you one that this was created by the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County, and it's a brochure called Your Voice Matters. Allison is putting a link in the chat to this. So we encourage you to read it. You can use it. It has a lot of the just thumbnail notes about what to do before the hearing, at the hearing, a few additional comments about preparing a written statement, how to be a good member in these as a testifier. So we encourage you to download this and use it, and hope that it's valuable to you. Okay, I am going to start right off by showing you a video of what we think is a really interesting and powerful testimony. This is an example of a virtual testimony. It was given in 2022 to the House State Government and Tribal Relations Committee. And as you watch this, I want you to ask, what works for you about this speaker? What do you appreciate? Do you have some thoughts about what you might change? So let's take a look. I'm going to stop sharing, and Allison is going to show us the video. You may have to turn up your sound on your speakers just to be sure you can hear it, but it should work. Here we go.
Hello, good morning.
Okay. Dear committee chair and committee members, my name is Emily Shi, and I support Senate Bill 5264. I support this bill because many Chinese Americans, including myself and many others I know, didn't know about many of the contributions made by Chinese Americans. For example, until I did a flashcard project about the history of Chinese Americans, I didn't know the Bing Theory was invented by Ah Bing, a Chinese American. After visiting his family in China, he was barred from ever re-entering the US because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. The Chinese Exclusion Act actually kicked the Chinese out of the US. Another example is when I learned about how a Chinese American soldier wasn't allowed to be an American citizen, though he had helped fight against slavery in the Civil War. Imagine not knowing the contributions made by people of your race. The result would be the same as if the contributions didn't exist. We learned about other races' contributions, so we should learn about contributions of people of our race as well. This bill will let more people know about the contributions made by Chinese Americans. It will also let people know more about the Chinese Exclusion Act and how the Chinese had a hard time. The Chinese were also mistreated while making the Transcontinental Railroad. Although many workers were dedicated to building the railroad, they weren't given any credit and were underpaid. However, there is one improvement that could be made to this bill. This bill only encourages public schools to recognize the history. For those in private schools, they might not know about the contributions of Chinese Americans. I suggest that the bill also include private schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Okay. What did you notice about that speaker? You could either drop something in chat or raise your hand. What do you want to comment about what you just heard? What did you appreciate about her? I see strong examples of critical points. He was incredibly cute. He was braver than me. Yeah.
Karen, Tiffany has her hand up.
Yes, Tiffany, go ahead.
I was going to say she was very on point. She was very passionate. She was able to speak to the experience of Chinese Americans without focusing on Chinese Americans, exclusively talked about how they learn about other races' contribution to American history, and discrimination and things like that as well. And also she focused on education at all levels, not just public schools, but private schools as well, which have their own interesting little caveat, if you will. And so she was able to focus on something I think that was she was able to do the balance of very exclusive towards her demographic, but also spoke to other demographics as well, where I, obviously not a Chinese American, was able to really listen to it and agree with it.
Yes, I appreciate that. She even was bold enough to make an additional suggestion at the end of something that she thought was missing. She certainly was speaking to her own experience. Yes, she was telling a story. She had facts. She made a very clear ask. But I also appreciate, I'm seeing some comments. Paul said, I felt like she was reading, not speaking. And that is true. She was clearly reading, and you will likely be reading. And the question is, how do you read and still actually feel like you're speaking to the representatives? I want to ask you this. Did you notice the difference it made when she looked up from her paper and you saw her eyes?
She was also a kid, so that's
well, of course. Yeah. I mean, and to that point, if this young woman can testify, every single one of you attending this meeting can testify. If she could do it, you could do it. I also see a note that said, I wonder about the speed of the speech. Yes, she actually was speaking a little quickly. That often happens when we're nervous. We're going to talk about some tips to help you not do that. But it is okay to realize she was reading and she was making her points. So I think in her particular case, you see some really good examples of how you can be yourself, how you can read, and how you can communicate well. And I think you also saw some examples of the need to maybe slow down and how important it can be to look up and focus at folks. So I'm going to go back and share my screen again. There we go. And let's jump back into it. So I want to now move to a description of the elements of strong public speaking. And we're going to go through these again, but let me just give you a sense of what good public speaking is, and really testifying is public speaking. So good public speaking appears relaxed and self-confident. Now, you may not feel this way inside, and most of us don't, but a good speaker is able to project a sense of calm confidence. Wouldn't that be nice? So we're going to give you some tips on how to make that happen. A good speaker displays energy. I've noticed in chat some comments about how to do that. There's a difference between energy and over-the-top passion. But it really is interesting because public speaking and testifying, it's different than one-on-one conversation. It really is. So it's helpful for you. You're so much in your head. It can be really helpful to literally focus on the people you're speaking to and in whatever way you can, push your energy out towards them. It really makes a difference. Good public speaking engages the listener. It is up to you really to pull the representatives into what you have to say. And more than just engaging, good public speaking builds trust. You connect with the listener. This is tough to do. Maybe you've got 60 seconds, but this can be done by being well prepared. And as Allison had said, by being authentically yourself. Don't try to be something you're not. Be yourself. Good public speaking is well paced. This matters. It's well paced. You want to move through your comments at a pace that's both clear and varied. We're going to talk about how to do that. And finally, and you've heard Pat say this, good public speaking and testifying finishes on time. You have to respect the established time limitations because your testimony will be cut off when you reach that limit. So let's look at each of these areas in more detail. You have a handout called a public speaking rubric. And I'd like you to have that as a reference as we move through these next sections of the training. I'm going to show it to you. Here it is. And you can see that this rubric actually goes through all of the elements of public speaking. I encourage you to use this. I hope it's a helpful tool for you. It starts with sort of the beginning elementary elements and what is not helpful in terms of delivering public speaking. One being the least effective, moving over to 4. So you can see in each of these areas, poise and appearance, eye contact, body language, voice, pacing, some tips on what actually moves you from being a novice speaker to someone who's pretty comfortable doing it. And there's also some good tips at the bottom about content that can enhance what you heard from Pat. So I'm hoping Allison is putting a link in chat to that, and we'll send that out to you afterwards. Okay. How do you appear relaxed and confident when your insides are churning? One of the things that's really helpful is pay attention to your breath and to your posture. Breathe. You just have to breathe and relax. While you're waiting to speak, I really encourage you, take slow, deep breaths, slow, deep belly breaths. Once you're feeling relaxed, focus your attention on the meeting rather than what you're planning to say, because you will have already practiced. We're going to say, please practice. So don't psych yourself out. Pay attention to what's going on. Now, if you when you get up to speak, or when all of a sudden you get that message that says, please come off mute and speak, if you're nervous, take a breath. Again, look at your notes, take a few breaths, sit up straight, because your posture is going to affect the quality of your voice. This is, I'm serious about this. Lift up through the center of your body, through the top of your head. Make room for your lungs to breathe. In fact, I want you to do that right now. I want you to put your hands on either side of your rib cage. Just sit up straight, please. Think about energy going up through the top of your head. Take a deep belly breath. You should be able to feel your ribs expanding. Let it out. That simple process of breathing is going to help you more than I can tell you when you get up to speak. Now, a couple of other tips. When you're testifying in person, you're going to have a microphone in front of you. You're going to want to adjust that microphone to your height. It needs to be in front of your mouth so you don't have to stoop or reach or lean. And you can watch other folks ahead of you and see what they do. Here's something. We almost never do this. You can smile. It is okay to actually smile. Doesn't mean what you're saying is not serious, but it can make all the difference. It can also help you to relax. Finally, take the time to think about what you wear when you testify, because how you dress says something about who you are and your respect for this process. So choose clothing that makes you feel comfortable, that you feel good about you, and lets the representatives know you're serious about the comments that you're making. Now, a few virtual tips. If the meeting is online, you really do want to take the time. We've learned this. Take the time to think about your background and lighting. I have overhead lighting on me right now. A clean, simple background is best. You probably all know we have the option of blurring our background on Zoom. That actually can be terrific, because here's the thing. You want the representatives to focus on you and your comments and what you're saying, not what they're seeing behind you. You want to be seen, so create an environment where you feel as comfortable as possible. Okay, how do you engage and build trust in 60 seconds? In our culture, often this happens by making eye contact. And you notice that in our young speaker. As you speak, be sure to look up from your notes as often as possible and make eye contact with the folks you're speaking with, whether it's an audience or whether it's your representative, because eye contact builds trust between you and the listener. And if it's uncomfortable, and it can be, to look directly in someone's eyes, you can look at their faces, that's okay. But looking up really matters. Now, you'll notice I use gestures. A note about gestures: find to use them if they feel natural to you. Sometimes if you are a hand speaker, trying to control your hands is actually going to even make you more nervous. But watch those gestures, make sure they're appropriate. Some people say if you're speaking in person, just putting your hands up on the table can be just really comfortable and it can center you. If you are presenting virtually, again, on Zoom, I think you all know this, but it bears repeating. Look directly into the camera. That's what I'm doing right now. You are not looking at the representatives unless you're looking directly into the camera. And that takes some practice. So I really encourage you to do that. You want to position your notes, if you can, so that you are looking up as often as possible. You can actually hold your notes right to the left and look back and forth. Folks are used to that. It's not a problem. But again, practice that before you begin. And you want to position your screen, again, I think you know this, so that your face is in the center. You can see I'm centered on my screen, not too high, not too low, not too close. And please remember not to touch the screen while you're testifying. That's annoying and distracting. You don't have a lot of time, so you want to focus on what you're saying. Now, let's talk about speech and voice. When we say your voice matters, as it says in the handout, we mean it. The way you use your voice makes a difference. You want to speak clearly. You want to speak slowly, maybe more slowly than you would normally. Often when we're nervous, we speak more quickly than normal, and that can cause you to stumble. You can confuse the folks you're speaking to. So make an effort to slow down your speech. As you heard from Pat, shorter sentences work to make your point. They also make it easier to deliver your testimony. And it can calm your nerves. So, as we mentioned earlier, you will most likely be speaking into a microphone. Again, don't let that throw you. You want it to be about 6 inches from your mouth. Speak directly into it. If you can't be heard, your testimony won't be effective, regardless of how carefully you prepared that statement and how much you practiced. Again, watch the people who are testifying ahead of you. Notice if they have to lean over the podium. It is okay to take that moment to pull the microphone down to you. Now, you really do want to speak in your normal voice, but it is helpful if you can to vary your tone and your pace and your volume. That keeps people's attention. You want to be very aware of any tendency you have to use fillers in speech. This is tough. Ers, ums, and my least favorite, which is like this, like that. They're distracting. You can remove those from your speech by practicing. It's as simple as that. Now, it is perfectly okay to be passionate, to convey strong feelings in your comments, but please always remain respectful of the representatives and other testifiers. Now, again, for your speech and voice, sit up straight. It really makes a huge difference. It affects the quality of your voice. Have a drink of water before you speak. If your mouth is dry, it can be tough to speak. Some folks say having lip balm is really helpful. So have water with you, have a little lip balm, have tools that make it helpful to you so that you can relax. If you are presenting virtually, and you will be, please, please know where that mute button is, because what's going to happen is you're going to get a notice on your screen that says, please come off mute and speak. That moment's going to terrify you and you're going to forget where your mute button is. So know where it is, know how to reach it, have it practice that. Small things will make you feel much more competent and comfortable. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about timing, and you've heard this referenced by Pat as well. You do have to keep within the stated time limits. It is usually 3 minutes. You heard Pat say that a good speaking pace is about 150 words a minute. So once you've developed your written testimony, be sure to time it. You can read it. You have a timer on, often on our phones. Time it to make sure you stay within the limits, and do prepare a shorter version. There are many times where you may walk in to testify and there are many folks who want to testify. What you thought was going to be 3 minutes is now 60 seconds. That comment made earlier in chat about bolding out your key statements, that can be really helpful, because if you haven't made a shorter version, at the very least, just go to those bold statements and use them. Let's talk about silence. We rarely do this, but if you've prepared and you know how much time you have, silence or a pause in speaking can be a great ally to you. It can really help you to make a point, because people do wait, right? They're hanging off your next word. What am I going to say next? Don't be intimidated, and don't be afraid to take a pause, particularly when you make an important point, because we need time as listeners to absorb what you're saying, and a pause can let you do that. Repeating a statement can also be powerful. Repeating a statement can really be powerful. It can make a difference, and it helps folks to get your point. So, and after you're done, your 60 seconds, don't leap up and run away. You do want to wait and see if there's any questions. There seldom are, but you do want to wait and see if there's any questions for you. Okay. Now I'm going to show you another strong piece of testifying. You will recognize this woman who is testifying, but I wanted to show you this. You're not going to see her face. You're going to see this from the back, but if you haven't actually ever been in a committee room, we wanted you to see what it actually looks like. Where are the representatives? They're up on a dais. If city council, this is actually a testimony to the state government, tribal relations and election committee. This was in 2020. You'll be seeing the speakers from the back. Things to notice are we're speaking into microphones. So you see microphones, you'll see that there are lit timers, red, yellow, green, and the chair is going to talk about that. So you have a sense of, how am I going to know when my time is up? Usually there's some way of knowing that. So I'm going to stop sharing. As you watch this, again, I want you to look at and think about, what do you appreciate? What qualities do you notice? How effective is this speaker actually at making her point? And pay attention a little bit to tone and pacing, some of the kinds of things that we spoke of earlier. So there you go. Here goes Allison.
And again, we'll try 90 seconds. I think you know the routine. Green means go, yellow means you've got, what, 15 seconds, 30 seconds? And red, a hole opens up and you fall into the floor, so.
Good morning, Senator Hunt and members of the committee. I am Allison McCaffrey. I'm a volunteer issue chair for the League of Women Voters of Washington. And I want to thank everybody who got 2575 to this point. I spoke with all four corners of the House. Thank you, Senator Hunt and Senator Zeiger, for talking with me before the session started. The League did a study 3 years ago and really jumped into redistricting in a big way. We started educational forums, and in addition to our 2,500 members across the state, we talked to 1,600 members of the public. You know, I got my start in redistricting, helping my grandmother, who was a 4-term Republican representative in the 60s. And we told her part in the redistricting battles of the 1960s. So that's how I learned about redistricting. This bill hangs together well as it's written, as it was passed. I want to make sure that the measurements and the community engagement parts of this bill, they're so important to engaging the public, getting voter turnout, getting people to support their elected officials, and frankly, making our communities better. You know, I more than most know the struggles, how we got to this good redistricting process, but we honor that process by making it better. Please vote this out of committee. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marty Webb.
Okay. Allison will stop sharing. And tell me, you can put comments in chat or tell me what it is that you observed. What worked?
I'll tell you one thing. They told
What?
us we went from 2 minutes to 1 minute as we were walking up.
Yep. Yep. That's why you really need to have, oh, Allison, I'm still seeing your screen share. You wanna, there we go. Yeah, it's why you really need to have 3 versions ready. Absolutely. What else did you notice? Laura, what did you see, Laura?
Oh, well, my first thought, oh, that's right. You're supposed to say, thank you for meeting, or letting me speak. But the thing that popped out at me, which I remember is really important, and she really stressed the word volunteer. Yeah. And then the other thing is that I'm wondering what you think about, I've been told don't use bill numbers, use the name of the bill. So I don't know. Anyway, maybe I noticed that one too, but is that a general rule? I guess that's a question.
Well, I think if you are, first of all, the commission has already said this is a hearing for Bill 1544, whatever it happens to be.
Okay.
I think when you're writing,
Okay.
you want to absolutely specify, here's the name of the bill that I'm supporting. But honestly, it can take more time to deliver the name of the bill than you've got to testify. So they know,
Okay.
you know.
Thank
yeah,
you.
they know.
I missed that. Thank you.
Yep. Great. Gabrielle.
I think what's important is she made the clear ask for them to support the bill. And that is one of the things when I was in front of the House Educational Committee, the moment that I sat down and I took the time, that procedure of that respect to thank all the committee members for allowing you to be present is a great moment in time for you to make that eye contact, for you to make that personal head up and see them. And then the first words out of my mouth was, I was here to seek a unanimous vote of yes for my bill, because I believe that each and every one of these elected officials had someone in their constituency that was like my son and like me as a parent, and to support this was to support their constituency. And I was able to get that unanimous vote out of committee.
So
That's the game.
Ask for something, really ask for what you want. And absolutely right. Tiffany, what do you want to add? Tiffany Elliott, come on off mute.
Thank you very much. I would like to add that I liked how Allison pointed out her grandmother's experience. I believe that's in the book Politics of the Possible.
It is.
I think that's her story, in the 1960s. And she was speaking to Representatives Zeiger, I think he might be a senator at this point, and talking about how she met with Senator Hunt's office, talking to Senator Zeiger, talking to how she's been to the 4 corners of Olympia, and really giving I understand where you're coming from. Thank you very much for taking the time. It wasn't really, it was making a personal connection without pandering. And I really liked that. And it was really saying, this is how I learned this experience from someone who's been in your chair. And I really liked that part of it. It was really personal. And even if I was someone who wasn't maybe inclined to agree with that, would be, oh, there's a personal connection. And that's what you're going to remember. And I really like that focus.
Yep. Personal connection. I think it also gave credibility. And so it's another way of your bona fides, stating your bona fides. Susan Fleming, what do you want to add?
Yeah, well, I was kind of saying the same things that were just said. I really like the story part of it because that makes people pay attention and listen. I also thought the friendly tone and the pacing where you had a chance to actually have it sink into your mind and integrate it was really excellent, as opposed to just fast, get it over kind of a thing. So in general, I really like the tone and the delivery.
So maybe less is more in some cases. I think we feel the need to pack everything into our testimony. Maybe less is more, and pacing can help. Anne Murphy.
Hi, I just wanted to also lift up what Marty put in the chat that we've heard before. It's not enough to just ask for support. You want to be more specific, and because they can support something and then not act on it. And so we want their action, which is their vote, whether it's on the floor or out of committee or whatever.
Absolutely. Yes, that's right. It was a very specific ask. Please move this out of committee. And of course, that ask is going to change depending on who you're speaking with. Marcia.
Yeah, one of the most important things to me is that you could hear every word she said.
Yes, you
I
could.
have been to so many meetings, so many government meetings where the person speaking doesn't seem to know where the microphone is, and you can't hear a thing that they're saying. And so their testimony means nothing if you can't hear them.
Absolutely right. That's what I'm saying. When you're in that room, watch how people are using the microphone, see what's working, and take a moment when you get there to make sure that microphone is going to work for you. There's some good things in chat. I see a note about if you're going to print out your comments, print them out in a nice big font so that you can actually read them. That's a great tip. I think you also heard Allison vary her pacing and her tone, and she was very conversational, which I think is helpful. Okay. All right, I'm gonna move us on. Let me go back to sharing my screen here. Here we go. Okay, I'll remind folks to put yourself on mute. And by the way, you've been very good at that. I really appreciate it. I just went away, didn't I? See, that's my Zoom. Do not upgrade to Windows 11. I am telling you. Let me go back in. I'm hoping this is, let's see. Here we go. Okay. All right. Now, I want to just talk very briefly about meeting in groups. And I'm wondering, I'm hoping a number of you are going to be attending the League of Women Voters Lobby Week. I'm getting some instability messages, Allison, just so you know. So can I just see a show of hands? How many of you do plan to participate in Lobby Week? That's coming up the week of February 6th. I'm scrolling through and I'm seeing good, great. We're going to have some of you do that. I would just want to give you some tips, regardless of whether you attend our Lobby Week. There will be times where you will hopefully go into a meeting with legislators or representatives as a group, as a small group. So let me just give you a couple of tips on this. I know we're going to talk more about it as we prepare for our lobby visits, but here are some tips that should help. You want to meet ahead of time with folks in your group to actually plan your strategy and make sure that everybody gets their questions answered before that session begins. So you want to walk in with a plan, knowing what you're going to say and who's going to say it. Simple first rule, please be on time for your meeting. If you have a meeting with a representative, usually they're scheduled back to back to back, 15 minutes at a time. You don't have a lot of time. So you want to go in, be there on time, be sitting and waiting so that you can make your point, get in and get out. You want to decide who will be the lead of your team. And that is the person who will manage the meeting, if you will, for you. That's the person that'll thank the legislator or representative for the meeting. He or she will introduce the group. They'll introduce the issues. We want to talk about these 3 issues with you, and they'll be the one to monitor the time and then thank the representative at the end of the meeting. You want to assign a note taker for the meeting. It's really helpful because you're going to want to capture what you heard and maybe report out or follow up later on. So it's good to have one member of your team who's the note taker. As you go in, make sure that you have identified what are the top 1, 2, no more than 3 issues, bills, items that you want to address. Make sure you have done your homework. You reviewed the content of those bills or proposals or ordinances. And as Allison said, if you're talking to our legislators, look at the league talking points. You want to decide which member will discuss which topic and make sure that each participant's comfortable with those talking points. And if it's your topic, know those 2 points, 3 points that you want to make. Now, after you make your points, ask for feedback and then listen. That's the whole point. Listen to what they have to say. Your note taker will take notes. And finally, we've talked about before, make sure you have a leave behind, it's that 1 pager and you can send it electronically afterwards. By the way, key point, know if your legislator or rep that you're speaking with is the sponsor of the bill that you are speaking to. There is nothing more embarrassing than going in, making 5 strong points and realizing the person you're sitting across from sponsored the bill and is fully on board. So know that, and I know there'll be additional skills and tools as we attend our League Lobby Week. Okay, now we're going to practice a little bit. So we want to think about those skills and tips that we've just discussed. We're going to break you into pairs, and Allison will do this. We'll put you in groups of 2. This exercise is going to take 10 minutes, and we encourage you to use that public speaking rubric, if you haven't looked at it, to say, what are those good qualities that I want to be watching for from my partner? And here's what you're going to do. This is very simple. It's just to give you a chance for you to speak and for your partner to listen. So introduce yourself, your name, where you live, your legislative district. We assume you know that. And tell your partner, yes, I've testified before, or no, I haven't. If you have testified, tell a little story about that. What was that like? What did you testify on? What were the key points that you made? If you haven't testified, just to practice, after you introduce yourself and say you haven't testified, tell a story about your name or where you came from. The point is for you to speak to each other. We're on Zoom, so I want you to practice that looking at the camera, and your partner will listen, will take notes, and will give you feedback. So 2 minutes to speak, 2 minutes to get notes, and then you flip, and then you do it again. So each of you has a chance to speak. Welcome back. Good to see you back again. Thanks for sticking with us. So let's take a little bit of comment. Just talk a little bit about maybe what you saw or heard, or who wants to comment on how that little bit of practice went. Okay, Tiffany, you are up. You have got things to say.
I hope that's not a bad thing. Let me lower my hand. I'm sorry. Okay, good. The person I was meeting with hadn't testified, but she said she found an old document, an old tape from her father testifying for a trolley system to Portland, because she lives about like Vancouver-ish area, the 18th district.
Wow. And
one of the things that stuck up for me was he said, I'm gonna be dead and gone by the time this is done. And despite the fact my dad passed away a few years ago, I laughed pretty hard. And apparently he passed away a few years ago and it's still not done. So it's like he kind of predicted that was good. It broke the ice in that it was blunt, personal, and extraordinarily hilarious. And I absolutely loved it.
And it was true. I mean, one of the things that we haven't really said, but look, you're going to testify, and I mean, you heard some of our other folks earlier say they've testified for months and months and months and months. That's true. How many years did it take for women to get the vote? So it is very possible that your testimony will be a seed, and you might need to keep replanting that seed for a very long time. Joanne, what did you want to add? Come on off mute.
I had a conversation with Marty, and what I noticed a lot was, first of all, she's very informed about her cause. And the second thing is she was able to infuse passion into what she had to say, along with her facts. And that really, really impacted what I thought about it.
Yeah, that's great. And that passion can be a good driver for you. That can actually help your butterflies to get in line sometimes. Okay, any other comments? Lynn Mason, what did you want to say?
Hi.
Hi.
I got to chat with lovely Carol. And one of the things we noticed when we were speaking to each other, I caught both of us, is that when your picture of yourself is off in the corner, you tend to look at that back and forth. And so for making that eye contact, I suggested we move that little picture of ourselves under the camera so you can just glance down at it, but you're still in the center in the direction of the camera. And anyway, that was just a comment that we both kind of discussed.
You know, that is such a good point. And it's one of the great strangenesses about testifying on Zoom, because if I'm sitting in a committee and I'm talking to you, I can't see myself, right? I don't see myself. It's very unnerving. You can also hide your picture, you know, if you want, or you can move it. You can hover over it and move it someplace else. If you're recording, sometimes you can't. But there also is an option in Zoom for you to hide your own picture. If that makes you more comfortable because you're not seeing yourself, go ahead and do that. It's a great tip. It's a great tip. Okay. So you've had a little bit of a chance to practice and we've given you some tips. Allison, let's just launch a poll and just see how you're feeling now about this thing called testifying. How you feel about public speaking. Allison's going to give you a second poll. Here you go. So now, would you still rather jump out of a plane into an alligator pit? Are your butterflies settling down? Are you even more comfortable? You feel like, okay, I got some tips. I can work on this. Or you love it. You are ready to go and change the world. We still have honest people that would just rather do anything than have to public speak. I get it. This is good though. I'm still watching. Give you just another couple seconds to pick your poison here. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll. We'll share the results here. So there you go. We have 9% of you just are probably always going to feel uncomfortable. I will tell you, there's actually never been a time that I haven't done public speaking, and I've been doing public speaking for many years. There's never been a time that I haven't had butterflies. And you'll always hear it said, but honestly, so the trick is always to get your butterflies flying in formation. That's just what they say. That is just the truth of it. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again here because I just have a little bit of a wrap up, and then we're going to actually let you do some practicing. So, but those are the main points that we wanted to make in this module, and I hope that that's been helpful. Here's the thing. Practice, practice, practice. I saw there was some great comments in chat that you can record yourself in a Zoom meeting and you can go back and watch yourself. You can, public speaking is unfamiliar and you're going to be under pressure. And when we are nervous and under pressure, here's what your brain does. It starts spending a whole lot of time trying to keep you calm, which means that there's less capacity to pull the information that you really need to have to string words together. So it's just true. It sort of derails everything. You might think you'll sound more rote with practice. Opposite's true. You're going to sound more in command of your testimony. So practice in front of friends or family. Again, record yourself on a computer or phone. It can be very weird if you've never done it to hear yourself speak. I guarantee you're going to say, that's my voice. Yeah, that's your voice. But it is really a good thing to do. And as you practice, you're going to become a more effective speaker in any venue, not just in testifying. And the more effective you become as speakers, the more you can actually